moment to prepare the live stream and go live. It says that it's setting up our meeting for us. It says it is redirecting our meeting for us. And we are officially live on YouTube. You all saw the struggle on the back end to get this live stream going. You would understand how excited we are, not just because we're finally live and loaded, but because we are so excited to talk to you today about Faces of First Year and specifically Project SOAR. So if this is your first time joining us for a Faces of First Year event, I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about how this works. If you didn't guess, it is brought to you by Pima's First Year Experience program. And the whole point of this live stream vodcast series is to introduce Pima's new students to the faces that matter to them behind the key resources at Pima that are here to help you and be of support, especially while you are in those first 30 credits or your first year at Pima. So today we are going to be featuring Project SOAR, and I have some fantastic guests with me today to help tell you all about this great program at Pima. So for those of you who I have not yet met, I am Renee Forsyth and I lead the first year program, and I'm going to let Ryan introduce himself next.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Huffman. I'm a he, him, and I am one of the first year experienced peer mentors this year, welcoming in the next generation.
And then Nancy, would you please introduce yourself for everyone?
Sure. So I'm Nancy Keller. I am the director of Project SOAR, which is what we're talking about today. And also, would you like me to discuss the introduction of my program?
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your program is, what your role is the program, and who the program can serve?
Awesome. And my pronouns are she and her, and we are a very friendly space for all people of all stripes of life, which is, I think, why you invited us here today, which is good. So Project SOAR is a program that serves students with documented disabilities, and we can talk a little bit later about how to get that documentation if you need it. And we help people with pretty much all their academic advising. We work in tandem with their program advisors to make sure they are taking the right classes and picking out teachers that are the best fit for them, and helping them transfer if that's something that they want to do. That can be an incredibly overwhelming experience. We help them, figure out how to access more resources, how to get involved. We do workshops on things like test taking strategies and how to hunt down scholarships. And we also have a really robust tutoring program, which is great. And we, again, work in tandem with the Learning Center. But sometimes it's nice to not only have someone who you can make an appointment with, sit down with, and get to know, but also someone who gets what it's like to be a student with a disability. Because it's not always a barrier, but it is always a part of your life and something that you thrive with when you have a little bit of extra support and compassion.
Absolutely. Now, you have mentioned, we'll just go ahead and talk about it now. So let's say somebody believes that they have a disability, but they have not yet, gotten it documented. So what would those steps in that process be in order for them to just clarify what does that look like in order to be able to get started with the program?
That's an awesome question. So for some people, they have been evaluated in high school, but then didn't really maybe grab that file on their way rushing out the door to get to college. And so you can always call your old high school if it's something that has been a part of your life in the past. If you've never been evaluated and you think you might have a disability, and when we talk about disability, try to stretch that concept a little bit so that it's not just one idea of what that looks like. We're talking about anything that qualifies under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It can be physical, vision related, hearing related. I have veterans in my program even who are here because of, bad knees, bad back, tinnitus in the ears from bombshells. I mean, we're talking about a really wide interpretation, learning disabilities, spectrum stuff, psychiatric stuff, all of these things. They might be a part of your life without you even realizing. And so for some of those disabilities, even your family doctor can help get a documentation for it. Even something like ADD, ADHD kind of stuff, things that you might be being treated for. All you need is a note from a doctor, basically, that's on some kind of letterhead that says, hey, yeah, this is this person, they're being treated for this because they have this disability. And then it's something where it's a little bit more like an evaluation. The Access and Disability Resource Office on any campus would love to help you get in touch with somebody in town. It does often cost a little bit of money, but it's also something that can help you through life. It's nice to have that information for yourself. It's nice to be able to give it to somebody if they ask. It's also just a great way to help understand yourself better, especially as it relates to you being a student.
Yeah. And I just want a caveat out there for those of you who are watching this video and or joining us live, shout out to our viewers right now. Even if you yourself do not have a documented disability, keep listening and learning because you never know. We are not wishing this upon everyone, but something may come up later for yourself or someone you know and care about, whether that's a fellow student, a friend, family member. And so just wanted to give a shout out for that. And also mention that Project SOAR is part of a larger program called TRIO. Can you explain to us a little bit about that TRIO umbrella?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So without boring you to pieces here, back in the 60s, there were these programs, there were 3 of them, which is why it's called TRIO. And it was all about getting access for people who maybe have been kind of like shoved off to the side a little bit in higher education. And we're like, no, you get up in front and center. Come on, get you an education, right? And so they focused on students with disabilities, students who identified as low income, and students who were the first generation to attend college. And then since then, now there's 9 programs, but they call it TRIO because it kind of stuck. And our particular brand of TRIO is student support services, and we're all about serving students who are in the college. Some of you might have heard of TRIO like Upward Bound, where they're working on helping students who are before they get to college get into college. We're about once you get here. And so we also have 2 sister programs at Desert Vista campus who are also TRIO SSS programs. You may have seen their talk through the first year experience, and they also can serve students with documented disabilities, or if you or someone you know or care about does not qualify as that, but might qualify as low income or first generation, you get in touch with them. They offer pretty much the same services we do. Also, if you're located closer to that side of town, you got them in your options as well.
Love that. All right, Ryan, why don't you take it away with our next question?
All right. So as you may know about the first year experiences, we like to keep things light and fun. So we have a fun question for you.
Okay.
If you were to describe Project SOAR as, I don't know, a type of plant, what would it be and why?
Okay. So I do not know the name of it, but there is this kind of plant that grows all over town, and I love it so much. And it looks like little worms or fingers that kind of are crawling into the sky. And I love this plant so much, and it's so weird. It really looks like it's from an alien planet, and I feel like that's totally us. We're a little bit odd, and it's okay, and we love it. In fact, it's a qualifier for if you get to work for our program is, are you a little bit odd? And then also, anytime something were to fall, this plant would catch it. And so I feel like we're all about, celebrating the differences in all of us and then catching you if you fall a little bit. And it's okay to be a little different. We love it.
Very nice.
Shout out to Elena, who is joining us live. Elena, if you or anyone else who's joining us live have any questions, just let us know through that chat. We'll be happy to answer those for you. All right, so going back to some more details with Project SOAR, I wanted to ask you, what do you wish you knew about your first year at college? So this is, kind of a nice tip for just in general first year students, but then also relating back to Project SOAR a bit.
Awesome. Okay. So I wish that I could have been like a little time traveling Nancy to go back and be like, freshman Nancy, this is what you need to know. And then also I've now made it my mission to just tell anyone in my life, including like the neighbor kid down the street who doesn't even know my name, hey, when you go to college, things to know, right?
You need a TARDIS to go back. I love it. We'll get you that.
I think the biggest thing that I would want to have known myself and to tell other people is to try to get past that anxiety about asking for help. There's this feeling, I think, that if I'm going to be like a mature adult, I don't ask for help anymore. Oh, no, my friends. No. In fact, I would say it is the biggest sign of being an adult is asking for help when you know you need it, and asking those resources or accessing those resources to help you get the help. I was in such a cool meeting once with a recent writing professor who were talking to a student who's really struggling. He's like, I'm trying so hard, but I just don't like asking for help. And she goes, well, that's too bad, because if you want to be an adult, you're gonna have to learn how to ask for help. And I was like,
Yes.
Okay, yes. And even though it sounds a little bit like tough love, it actually was just one of the coolest pieces of advice I've seen someone give. That like getting to college isn't about now not needing anybody else or being, you're so like adult and on your way and doing your things. You're like, I don't need anybody. I don't need help. I got this. Right. Or even, in the case of Project SOAR, we serve students who have disabilities. There's also, I think, this feeling that I got a lot of help in high school and now it's time for me to not need as much help. It's about learning how to get the right help, accessing the right resources, and thriving in your life with this disability who's kind of just like sitting in the back seat of your like super cool little car, whatever you imagine it, unicorn car for me. That like it is going to be a part of who you are, as is learning how to ask for help and just saying, yes, I am going to be my own independent, amazing self, while also, figuring out when I need and when I need it.
I love that. Thank you.
I agree. We accomplish more together than we do on our own. So I fully support that. I do have a question though. So for everybody who's interested in, Project SOAR and TRIO and all that stuff, when is your resources open and available to us? How do we, when do we come up and get that?
Right. You're like, if you've already committed to asking for the help and getting the resources, how do you do it? Right.
Exactly.
So awesome question. We are kind of open, easy breezy. You may be able to tell a little bit from my personality. That's kind of how we roll. So anytime you want, if you're like, hey, this could be interesting, even if you're curious about it, but you're not necessarily ready to commit, there's no particular time you have to enroll. Also, let's say that you come in as a freshman, you're like, yes, this, I'm ready, let's do this. And I don't necessarily think I need the help right now. And then the following semester, you think to yourself, you know what, I definitely want to check out that Project SOAR. We're always available. Also, you might know, a student who's been here for a couple semesters and you think, oh my gosh, my sister, my brother, my tia, whoever could really benefit from this. Please, don't feel like they've missed a chance, because we are kind of open enrollment all the time, because we know that it's not, most people are pretty good about knowing what the first 10 steps, but you don't get to know all 55 steps of joining college and doing it the right way at one time. So if you come up with something later, we're there for you.
All right. And then where would we go to get hooked up with Project SOAR? Are you at a campus? Are you online? Like, what's the best way for me to get in contact with you? Where do I go?
Awesome question. So we are housed at East Campus, but one of the kind of interesting things that's happened with COVID, obviously we'd prefer that we didn't learn a lesson the hard way, but we've realized that, like we're doing right now, there are virtual options that we didn't even realize that we had available to us. And so any student who's attending any campus can be a part of Project SOAR. And that's also true for our other sister programs at Desert Vista. However, if you wanted to see us in person, we'd love to have you at East Campus. Also, the tutoring that I mentioned, we're doing this really odd hybrid model right now where it's like, yeah, you can do it in person at East by appointment and also virtual, like you just kind of work it out with the tutor. So they're there, they're ready to help, they're figuring some things out. I've got a couple tutors who are actually U of A students who they're tutoring in between U of A classes, like in a little nook in the library virtually. Because it's done before, right? Isn't that cool? And it's just really neat because it's been able to open up a lot of options. Also, I've had students in the past where, like, let's say all their classes are at West Campus and they live on that side of town. And they're like, well, I guess Project SOAR is not for me. No, my friends. They used to actually like drive over to us, and now there's just lots of other ways to do that, which is cool. So definitely online, virtual, definitely East Campus. And also, if you are interested and you do get involved, we're very willing to just kind of figure out what you need and try to make it happen.
I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic was increased awareness of accessibility and how there's a whole lot more that we can do. And so I appreciate hearing that this is one of the many examples of increasing the ways that we can make ourselves available to the students to connect them and help them out. So I love that.
Well, quick
follow-up
question. If I do have questions about your Project SOAR and stuff like that, is there somebody that I could email, or do you have a website or anything like that I could take advantage of?
Thanks for asking. Good question. And I understand you'll be able to make this available to folks so that they don't have to just memorize like the URL.
It is in the link or in the chat right now.
Boom, right? I love it. So the website is available through kind of the Pima website and student resources, and Trio's got its own little thing, which is cool. And then you find us. And our application is actually right on the website, which is kind of handy. There's a couple other papers that go with it that we'd want people to fill out. And we can do it virtually because we're cool like that now, right? I said papers, but I mean that in a very loose sense. But really what you do is you kind of let us know, this is something I'm interested in by applying, but maybe you're not quite there yet. And you're like, I just want to ask some questions. What is this thing all about? And I would direct you to my colleague, Casey Norman. She is fantastic. Super fun, cool story about Casey. She was a Project SOAR student herself. So not only was she a Pima student, not only did she go through this crazy freshman experience herself, but not only does she have a disability and gets what it's like to live and thrive with it, but now she's come full circle as she's back as an advisor, which is so cool. Yeah. Excuse me, I've got a little Tucson in my throat. But so I've made Casey's email available because you can ask her anything, and you can ask me too. I'm N is in Nancy Keller, and then the number 1 in place of the C Norman that you got there. But Casey's a great place to start because she would also end up being your main advisor if you were to get into the program. So you get to know her a little bit.
All right. So to wrap things up, I always like to finish with the why. Why does this matter to our students? And so tell me, why is Project SOAR important for first-year students to know about for themselves and or someone they know?
Yeah, I think that's really maybe the most important question, because I feel like everything else falls into place once you realize, yes, this is something that I want in my life, or at least something I want to explore. I think that college can be a huge, overwhelming, bureaucratic nightmare if you don't have the right people on your team. And I think that if you can find those people early on, which is why I love freshman experience so much. If you can find those things and those people in your life that you click with early on, it makes the whole experience so much easier to manage. One of the things I often tell people is that part of my job is to deal with the barriers and the nonsense and the institutionalism so you don't have to, right? And so I think that if your main job is to live your life and do the best that you can and to be a student and to figure out all the other pieces of living and being a student. And then I can handle things like, why is there a hold on my account? Because I swear I did all the steps. Like, let me help you figure out the nonsense that's going to get thrown at you. And you do the job that you are best for, which is being an amazing student and figuring out how to live life and be a student. And so I think that's probably the biggest why, is just if you can get the right people on your team who can help you navigate this system. Also, I mentioned transfer. If transfer is interesting to you, that can be its own huge, overwhelming process. And we are with you every step of the way. If you get into our program, you're with us until you graduate or transfer. So it's not like you keep reapplying. We're with you. We're on your team. We are your family from now until you choose to do something else that is not Pima. And then usually a little bit after that. I had somebody show up at my office the other day with a bunch of brownies, and she's like, I just graduated from ASU and I wanted to say that I would not have done it without this program, and here are these brownies to say thank you. I know. I love that so much. And like I said, like we do just make it a little bit more, smaller, family friendly. It just becomes, if you don't know where to go, you start with us. And then we'll help you figure out where to go. And that is so valuable. And the program advisors are amazing, but their caseloads are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Our caseloads are like 50. So, you email me, I get back to you in a couple minutes. And I'm like, oh yeah, here's where you find that weird little thing about GPA. Easy peasy. So I think
there's also something magical about working with people, like you said, who have the bandwidth and ability to pay you that extra attention, but also who just get it. And so when you're also not just managing how to be a student, but also other things in life, it's something special when you find that family and that group of individuals who are just willing to get your back unconditionally and irregardless. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you do with Project SOAR. Thank you for your time today and telling us a little bit more about it. For those of you who are watching this recording, do not be shy. You all see how awesome Nancy is, right?
So awesome.
Super not
Over
scary
here. Did
or
you see the awesome?
intimidating. And 100% her and the others in the department are there for you. So please do not be shy in exploring those links that we shared in the chat. They'll also be in the video description. One of these two places, depending on how you're watching the recording afterwards. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions or comments, reach out to them through email, drop a comment below in the video. We will get them to the right people that need to see them to answer them for you. But otherwise, I want to thank everyone today for joining us for this recording. Click the like button if you like it. Subscribe to this page if you want to see more content like this to help you out with your first year at Pima. And we'll be doing this all over again in November when we will be talking about Code of Conduct. More details about those dates and times on our social media pages at Pima FYE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And again, thank you so much. Have a great Friday, everyone. Take care.